Welcome to the Lucy Robbins Wells Library Book Talks by Librarians program. Boy, that was a mouthful. I'm Karen, and I have here with me Jen and Julie. And we're going to talk about some of our favorite books today. The book talks will include fiction and nonfiction titles. So sit back and enjoy. I am going to talk about The Book of Longings today by Sue Monk Kidd. It is one of my top picks for 2020. If you're familiar with Sue Monk Kidd, she also wrote The Secret Life of Bees and The Invention of Wings. So I feel like she has outdone herself again with this book, which is a reimaging of Jesus's life. The story beautifully tackles the question, what if Jesus had a feminist wife? The story is told from the perspective of Anna. She's a brave, ambitious woman who is struggling against a repressed society. She's the daughter of a wealthy politician, and she is expected to marry a man that is chosen for her, not the penniless carpenter named Jesus that she meets in a chance encounter. What follows is this captivating portrayal of a woman's longing, silencing, and awakening. I loved it.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a piece of nonfiction entitled The Girls by a journalist named Abigail Pesta. And Abigail Pesta, with her background in journalism, proceeded to interview gymnasts who had been victims of Larry Nassar. That name might sound familiar. He had been the official doctor of the U.S. Olympic women's gymnastic team and used that position as physician to physically abuse, sexually abuse the young gymnasts on the team. It is horrific. The individual gymnasts were treated in therapy rooms with their parents present. What was so unusual is that with the parents present, Nassar positioned himself in such a way as to block the view of the parent when he was performing the physical therapy on his victims. And since the victims assumed that everything was as it should be because their parents were in the room, and the parents assumed that everything was as it should be because they were in the room, this was allowed to continue for much, much too long. One victim is too much. The girls are cutting to the end of the story. The girls are given an opportunity at Nassar's trial to speak their mind, to confront the defendant, and they really do pack a wallop. Cutting to the end of the story, if I can, at Nassar's trial, at Larry Nassar's trial, after he was convicted, the judge gave each of the victims an opportunity to confront the perpetrator of these heinous acts upon each of them. And they really do, for lack of a better expression, let him have it, as well they should. Again, this is very, very gripping, at times very, very detailed. And as a journalist, Pesta did an excellent job. And that's it.
Sounds good. All right, so this is mine. So from the author of The Keeper of Lost Things, we have Ruth Hogan's second novel, which is The Wisdom of Sally Red Shoes. Although with darker themes, Ruth's writing is just as wonderful and her characters are just as joyous as her first book. So we have Masha. Masha's life was changed beyond all recognition 12 years ago. And although time has moved on, her heart is still heavy. Her life revolves around the local swimming pool, where she practices holding her breath, taking walks in cemeteries, and spoiling her dog, which I can relate to. Although Masha is troubled by her past, a chance meeting with two extraordinary older women brings hope and light for both Masha and the story. Ruth Hogan's characters are a joy to discover, and we see this as we get to know the two characters of Kitty Nurl and Sally Red Shoes herself. Uplifting and humorous, Masha learns to heal with the antics of these two role models as she gets the chance to start living again. Once again, Ruth Hogan has delivered a story that will delight. It's an emotional, moving, and beautifully written story, and the wisdom of Sally Red Shoes is very well crafted, charming, and a complete joy to read. So this was a good one.
I think we're back to me. So my next choice is the novel American Dirt by Janine Cummings. It was published this year. This book tells the story of Lydia Perez. She is a middle-class Mexican bookseller, and she flees Acapulco with her 8-year-old son, Luca, after a drug cartel violently murders her family. And her husband, who is a journalist, also gets murdered. The reason for that is that he had been profiling the head of the drug cartel. So he kind of put a target on their backs. Lydia and her son then began to make this treacherous journey to the United States as undocumented immigrants, and they do it on a freight train. They befriend many other migrants on the way. And the story is heartbreaking, it's uplifting, it's hopeful, but mostly it just portrays how strong the human spirit really is. I really was just engrossed in this story. That's it.
Okay. My next selection, also a piece of nonfiction, is The Unexpected Spy by Tracy Walder. This is a 2020 release. As I say, it's a piece of nonfiction. Tracy Walder is a blonde Californian. She was a graduate of the University of Southern California, where she was a Delta Gamma sorority member. Not exactly the picture one would paint if one were asked to describe a CIA operative, or for that matter, an FBI agent. But she went ahead, as unlikely as it might seem, she went ahead and she applied to the CIA. She was accepted. She became an agent who worked overseas. What I find equally intriguing is the fact that redactions of portions of the manuscript of the book were required for security reasons. It was vetted by the CIA. And in so doing, you'll see that there were paragraphs and sentences, words were blacked out. The author actually opted to keep those redactions apparent in the book. So as you leaf through, you will see lines that are blacked out, which really does add to the intrigue of the book. She took her work very, very seriously. She was working and tracking high-profile terrorists during George Bush's administration. She ultimately resigned from the CIA, applied for work at the FBI, did encounter, not from, well, she encountered from her some of her colleagues discrimination, simply because she didn't look the part. But she certainly was professional to a T, and she ultimately did resign from the FBI. And we're hearing in this memoir an after the fact recounting. Excellent. The Unexpected Spy by Tracy Walder with Jessica Anya Blau, 2020.
Okay. So here we have a brand new book from a brand new author. This is Daisy Cooper's Rules for Living by Tamsin Kiley. Daisy Cooper's life has been pretty uneventful until the moment it suddenly ends. Unfortunately, her death is literally an accident. Daisy wasn't meant to die for another 50 years. But one terrible, embarrassing clerical error is behind it all, and Death himself is to blame. So it's a bit of a fun story. Daisy battles against her new reality, and she starts to realize that letting go isn't just a challenge faced by those left behind. She learns how to survive this impossible time, strange friendships, hopes, and even love begins to come alive in the most unexpected ways. Dripping with heart and humor, Daisy Cooper's Rules for Living is a fresh and modern take on loss, love, and friendship. It's a joyful story about our own humanity and a reminder of what it means to truly live. Definitely a fun, enjoyable read from the first page to the end, and I look forward to see what the author will write in the future. And that's it.
The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid was published in 2017. This breathtaking historical fiction / celebrity gossip beach read was mesmerizing. The story highlights reclusive Hollywood movie icon Evelyn Hugo, who at 79 is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant to tell her story, everybody is astounded, including Monique. Summoned to Evelyn's luxurious apartment, Monique listens in fascination as the actress tells her story. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s, to her decision to leave show business in the 80s, and of course, her 7 husbands along the way, Evelyn depicts a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great but forbidden love. Monique is so moved by Evelyn's story, but as it nears its conclusion, it becomes apparent to her that her life and Monique's are irreversibly tied. This was really fun, interesting read.
Okay. Another piece of nonfiction that I'd like to recommend is entitled In Our Prime, How Older Women Are Reinventing the Road Ahead. This is written by Susan J. Douglas. She is a professor of communication and media at the University of Michigan, and she's taken up the sword on behalf of aging women in her fight against the term that she has coined, which is gender ageism. She does not hide the fact that this is a very personal fight, that she's a member of this class of aging women, and she proceeds to address problems with different industries and the way those industries seek to advertise their products when they're targeting the aging female. The cosmetic industry is one villain in that regard. The theater and television industry is addressed by Douglas as well, as presenting aging as something negative to be avoided and to be avoided at all costs. She turns her attention to the issues of drug and prescription costs for the aging, to the growing insufficiency of Medicare, and the disparity between pensions for men and for women. She is not reluctant in the book to share her political views, but regardless of which side of the aisle you find yourself on, the issues she raises on behalf of aging women do deserve serious attention from both sides of the aisle. And that's In Our Prime by Susan J. Douglas.
Okay, it's another Eric Larson book. So we all know how much I love Larson's. This is one of his older ones, In the Garden of Beasts, Love, Terror, and an American Family in Hitler's Berlin. Larson takes us through the rise of power of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis in Germany, but we witness this ominous time period through the eyes of William Dodd, the US ambassador to Germany from 1933 to 1937, as well as his family. So through the family's experiences, you can see the incredible gullibility of the world and the unwillingness to believe that such vile events could be unfolding into something even worse. Larson has a talent for taking a big historical event and combining it with a compelling individual story to bring the hits closer to home. Here he uses the broader context of the historical event World War II that we all know, but he personalizes it so that everything becomes much more meaningful and relatable. Larson's writing is so easy to read, I always enjoy it, and he makes the history vivid and personal, erasing all those years that have come in between. He writes in such a way that there is a sense of urgency that even if you know the ending of how the story ends, you still can't wait to come to the conclusion of it. And that's it.
Normal People, a novel by Sally Rooney. Sally Rooney is best known for her novel Conversation with Friends, which I have not read, but it is certainly on my list after reading this. I just loved this book. It's a story of a relationship between two people that spans a 5-year period. So at school, Connell and Marianne pretend not to know each other. He is popular, he's well-adjusted, he's the star of the school football team, while she is kind of a lonely person. She's proud, she's intensely private. But when Connell comes to pick his mother up from her job at Marianne's house, where she works as a housekeeper, a strong connection grows between Connell and Marianne, and it's one that they're determined to hide. So fast forward to a year later, they're both attending Trinity College in Dublin. Marianne has found her feet in new social circles, while Connell now is kind of sitting on the sidelines, shy and uncertain. So throughout their years at university, the two kind of circle each other, straying towards other people and other possibilities over the years, but always magnetically kind of drawn back again towards each other. So as Marianne veers into self-destruction, and Connell is searching for meaning elsewhere in his life, they each have to figure out and kind of decide how to deal with how far they're willing to go to save each other. I thought this was a wonderful, wise, coming-of-age story. I just can't say enough about it. I would highly recommend it.
I'd like to recommend yet another piece of nonfiction entitled 10 Women Who Changed Science and the World by Catherine Whitlock and Rotary Evans. It's a 2019 release and an eye-opener, especially for somebody such as myself who does not have a strong background in science. There are 10 chapters in the book, roughly 15 to 20 pages each, which address the works of each of these women. One or two you would recognize, perhaps. Marie Curie is discussed. Rachel Carson, the environmentalist and biologist, is discussed, and she is also the author of Silent Spring. But Virginia Apgar, the pioneer in the field of obstetric anesthetics, is discussed. Dorothy Hodgkins, the winner of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Henrietta Leavitt, an astronomer who devised a method that enabled members of her field to measure the distance to stars. These are just some of the names that you will come across. Without that strong background in science, I did find that I did need to reread certain pages because I was learning certain concepts that might, not be new to members of the listening public right now. But I did come away from the book feeling as if I had learned something, as if it was very worthwhile, and thinking about and taking women even more seriously than I already do. So this is 10 women who changed science and the world. And that's that.
Okay, so here we have Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, the true story of New York City's greatest female detective and the 1917 missing girl case that captivated the nation. Long title. So here we have author Brad Ricca has written a spellbinding story about an always wearing black attorney, Grace Humingston, who also had a knack for sleuthing. Grace's reputation as a detective was due in large part to the fact that she was able to solve the disappearance of a young girl who seemingly vanished into thin air one winter's afternoon. While the police bungled the investigation into the missing girl, even going as far to claim that she was a runaway, Grace pursued any and all leads until she solved the mystery. Grace's story is amazing because not only was she only one of the 1,000 female lawyers in the United States in those early years of the 20th century, but she was also a tireless crusader for justice, the rights of the poor, and especially rights of women. She often risked her life, and as a well-to-do New York society woman, her reputation in order to bring the truth to light. Grace racked up many more achievements during her lifetime, and author Brad Ricca has done an excellent job in documenting many of them, while also giving readers a detailed look at the woman herself. She brought light to the story of a young female lawyer who was unafraid to stand up for gender equality at a time when women were not even allowed to vote. And that was pretty amazing. So definitely a good read, and I recommend it.
Okay, my final choice for today is a mystery by author Laura Lippman. It's titled Lady in the Lake. The inspiration for this novel was based on two crimes, real-life disappearances that took place in Baltimore during the 1960s. One was a young white girl, the other a black woman. The author was really interested in exploring these deaths and how differently they were handled by the media at the time. So the story centers on beautiful, bored, 37-year-old housewife, Maddie, who decides one day to leave her husband and become a crime reporter. And it really is out of the blue, but that is exactly what she does. Maddie explores the circumstances of these crimes that she's so interested in. And in her quest to find answers about how the media handled things, what exactly happened with the disappearances and the subsequent deaths, she ends up learning a lot about her own desires for her life too. This was really a captivating mystery read with twists and turns, and was interesting. It was especially interesting because it was based on two situations that had actually happened back in the 1960s. So if you like mysteries, you're interested in the Baltimore area, this is a great choice for you.
My final selection is actually not nonfiction. It is a piece of fiction entitled The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. It's a 2019 release. And it was, in a word, gripping. It was so gripping that I couldn't put it down. I just read through in about a day and a half. This is the author's first novel, and its focus is on that of a talented and well-known painter, a woman in her 30s who, without apparent initial explanation, murders her husband, an accomplished photographer. The accused woman is arrested. She doesn't utter a word. She's confined to a mental institution where she passes her days in silence. A young man who's trained as a therapist applies for a position at the institution where she remains confined, and his persistence earns him the opportunity to become her therapist. How he handles his new patient, how she reacts to him, what he learns about her background, and the ultimate outcome of the relationship will catch the reader off guard and will cause one to ask, who, if anyone, can be trusted. So this is a high recommendation for The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelis.
Okay, last one. So as usual, Mystery by Ruth Ware never disappoints. At this point, I've read almost all of her works, and The Turn of the Key is just as good. Here we have Rowan, a childcare worker who unexpectedly comes across an ad for a nanny position in Scotland. It's one of those opportunities that seems too good to be true. A job taking care of children in a high mansion in the Scottish Highlands with an income that can't be beat. A little suspicious. But despite her underwhelming qualification, Rowan gets the position to take care of 4 young girls. But mere months later, she's sitting in prison, accused of killing one of the children in her charge. What could have happened in such short time? As Rowan tells her story to a lawyer, she explains the strange occurrences at night, the malfunctioning security system, the absent parents, all of it mounting to uncertainty and fear as she realizes that something's not quite right with the place. This is a definite slow burn of a mystery novel, with new clues dispersed here and there, leaving you wondering what could have happened that tragic night and who is to blame. And that is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware.
Great. Well, I think we're finished. We hope that you enjoy the book talks and that you might get a chance to pick up a few of the titles that we've recommended. Thanks for listening and watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.